Anyone have any thoughts now that Lion I know you do some development bit. I don't know if you're one of these people who would have got a Lion beta or test or know somebody who would have or no? Yes?
Yes, yeah. No, I know people that do. I did not re-register this year for 2011
Okay.
yet. I am so actually busy into back-end databases with like Sybase and Microsoft SQL and a little bit of Oracle right now. I don't know if my programming in the last year or so has really intensified in terms of just database programming. So I've had a bit of a breather, I guess, from the traditional GUIs type stuff that I used to do.
Okay, well, based on your secondary and that you know people who are messing around with the actual beta, and I'm sure you've looked over their shoulder here or there, any initial or additional impressions about Lion without saying things you shouldn't?
Let's see. I'm just going to say there's been some complaints about more API, more API policy coming down. It's just some buzz that I've been getting from what they've been telling me. Kind of a direction. I guess it's more of a direction versus where it's been.
It's very clear based on what of that is making it into the public thing that Lion is a bit of a forking and turn for OS X, more so than the past upgrades have been. In terms, like you're saying, in API regulation, and in some aspects in the general GUI, in that it's beginning the process of moving very much. It's not complete. It's like an intermediary step of moving to all these full screen apps and stuff. I'm looking at this and I get the logic, and I think a lot of users will love it. But it's one of those things, I'm wondering if without meaning to, if this isn't going to ultimately coalesce in Lion being a Vista for OS X. If I don't think it's quite that bad, and I don't think it's anything that unintuitive, but it's one of those, Apple users are fickle.
I would not consider it a Vista. To me, it's going to be likely it'll be another, the arguments from the Windows side will be, this is just another service pack, and here are the stupid Apple users paying for yet another service pack. And that would be what I would say safely, just knowing what I know. As far as Vista, I considered Vista actually quite a good direction that Microsoft took. I've always considered Vista the whipping boy for Microsoft, in that Microsoft finally changed its gears and said, you know what, the line in the sand for our legacy support has to start now.
Well,
it's going to be a painful transition, and Vista took a beating.
Well, and there's going to be some transition like that as Apple begins the process of trying to move everything over to an App Store type thing. But what I was referring more to is the UI changes. One of the biggest violent reactions to Vista was not the legacy, it was not the change in things, it wasn't that they couldn't install stuff, it was that the UI had changed just enough that people who knew where everything was and how things worked and were used to doing things way XYZ, it didn't work that way anymore. And they either liked and could adapt to the new way, or they didn't.
Classic mode, and people didn't like the navigation because the biggest complaints that I worked with in her authority department was driver failures and things not working, incompatibility. Oh my gosh, it went on and on. And they were like, I cannot get my old software to run properly, and we're losing money daily, and this and that. And I mean, those were the major complaints that I just kept hearing over and over.
There were those complaints too, but like the complaints I was getting those complaints, but those complaints were largely addressable with a competent IT department. Not entirely, but largely. But the other complaints we were getting, at least the places I was working when that was going on, was they didn't like the change in the taskbar. They didn't like that, their menu bar was gone. They didn't like these. They didn't like the fact that the control panel was now entirely different, and there wasn't an option to go back to a control panel they knew and loved, and all these little things. So the thing that became annoying is they had to call IT to go, what's the new way to do this? What's the new way to do this? What's the new way? It's like that was the call we were getting. Everything. So, like, they were things they knew how to do, but they couldn't figure out the Vista way to do it. As soon as you showed them the Vista way to do it, they're like, well, that's stupid. All right. It's like, but they kind of needed somebody. What was desperately needed when Vista made those changes was but I would see Apple doing this. It pains me to say this, but I would see Apple doing this. Was Vista needed to come with a book that said, it doesn't work this way anymore. The new way is this.
Well, I would say that Apple doesn't have the demographic that's going to start barking like that. You're going to have a tremendous amount of the Apple fans say this is, if there is, and I can't actually state the fact, even if I did know or did not know of the GUI changes, but Apple demographics are that which they'll simply say this is more of Jobs' wisdom and magic, and we will fall in line to liking it and defending it if there is critics to it. I mean, I've witnessed debates about extensive research going into why OS X has the minimize and maximize buttons on the left-hand side versus Microsoft's on the top right thing. I mean, ridiculous things like this. And I'm sure debates will fall in line with stuff like that the more that there are with any GUI implementation on the Apple side. I just notice people tend to say, I love it, Apple knows so much, and they care so much about us, and kind of like your 1984 scenario.
They know what's best. They always know what's best. I'm not capable of making my own decisions, but they always make the right ones for me, and they tell me it's what I would have chosen anyways.
Yeah, some things are fine, and some things aren't. Like, everybody was so amazed at the fans, the little fan from the dock. I thought that was like, this is so hokey. It's completely useless to have a fan coming out of the dock, but people would go on to YouTube and make videos and look how cool this is. And I bet you they're probably not using it today. It was just a short-lived gimmick that people wanted to show off, and I guess Apple just threw in there. And you'll see some other stuff that does, things like that as the software gets updated that are just completely gimmicky and hokey, and what's the point?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting transition. I'm a little surprised that they didn't wait to refresh some of the systems they're refreshing until Lion was ready, because isn't Lion supposed to be launching like third, fourth quarter this year?
Yeah, later this year. They don't. It's the hardware now is not really in line with what they want to do, with what they need to put in terms of software. Lion's not going to need anything more aggressive or any type of special hardware. The only thing
I know that, but really the whole logic behind buying a Mac is you want OS X. And when you buy OS X, you want the latest version of OS X. It's one of those things. Okay, we've done a MacBook Pro refresh. We've released a new Air. It's like we're going to release all the hardware, and the Mac Apple enthusiasts are going to go buy the hardware, and then they're going to have to buy a software upgrade because the hardware came out before the software. And it's one of those. Would it really be so difficult to release both at the same time?
They're going to have a late refresh. Apple is pretty consistent about having early year models and then late year models. Like you'll go onto their spec sheets and it'll say, except for Mac Pros. Mac Pros I think have been pretty consistent, just one
Yeah, I don't see the Mac Pros getting refreshed again when Lion comes out. I see
early or fall refresh or early year refresh, and then there's always like a late model.
Yeah, I see like the iMac and the Mac Mini getting a refresh right around the time Lion comes out, so you have a new system with Lion.
Yeah, the desktops you'll probably see something pretty cool come out. I don't think it's going to be drastically different. But
no, it'll be like an.
You never know, but their notebooks are their biggest share of Macs, period, in terms of sales. And I don't know what else they could go from here. I think it's dumb, like we were talking about before, to drastically change a design. I think they're doing it right. They're making the hardware up to spec and really moving on.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, you missed it here, but I had to give them credit for finally putting dedicated graphics cards in there. It's like, aside from the obvious design flaws I don't like about Apple, and having with the way I use a computer and the way I want my computer to look, and the fact that I'm not an OS X fan, I have to give credit that this refresh that they've done is overall a very good refresh. Very good hardware, very modern system. Most of the things I've spent the last 6 months to a year bitching about have been addressed. Not 100%, but most.
Sure.
Okay. So I guess we'll find out more about Lion as the quarters go on, and we'll just have to go from there.
I'll tell you the lock. I'll just give an attachment to the lock and key when you get what we call the product seeds, which are Apple or Mac developer knows what the product seeds are and disclaimers that come with it. See, Apple's changed the way now you sign up for memberships. But from the old days that I've had like Premier memberships and all this other stuff, you used to get all kinds of credits and things like that. You still get a little bit of the assets that used to be, but it's not. It's very different now. They made it cheaper, I think, for access to a lot of their development models, but you have now like a mobile entrance, and then you have the Mac entrance and things like that. And so it's a bit different, but my point is that it is heavily guarded.
Yeah, that's the thing. While we're on that topic, I've always wondered if that secrecy in some ways interferes with some people just not wanting to develop for the Apple ecosystem because they don't want to deal with that bullshit.
I haven't ran anybody. Microsoft is just as draconian.
Oh, I know. It's yeah. When it comes to, yes, I'd like to make your product better. It's amazing how both of these companies just go on. Wait, what? Tinfoil hats? You must be evil. You must be wanting to steal assistants.
Oh yeah.
It's like
Microsoft's gotten worse over the years. Well, I think it's because so many of their partners have screwed them over, like taking a lot of the developer discs that come out and the dev network discs and giving out those serial numbers.
They have wound up on torrents and other stuff. Yeah. Well, and Microsoft understandably went completely nuts because when they tried to kill XP and people who were retail OEM distributing partners, they're like, I can't sell Vista, but I can sell XP, so even though you don't want me to do it, I'm going to keep issuing XP keys even though you've ordered me to stop. So Microsoft has become incredibly paranoid with who they give that authority to, because even though they've officially killed XP and said nobody can sell it, there are still plenty of stores issuing new XP keys even today. And it's one of those, they don't trust people with that authority anymore as a result. They're like, no, we've killed this product. You cannot keep it alive. Apple, because of, like you were pointing out, the Jobs did it for our own good mentality, hasn't really had to deal with a problem like that. And I don't think they will anytime soon. They're not only going to have to release crap, they're going to have to release something in the magnitude of upgrading to it bricks your device.
Right.
To have that problem.
Let's be clear. I mean, Apple still has just above 10% of the market versus 90% to Windows. You're going to deal with a whole new set of variables when you're 90% of the market versus 10% of the market. And the demographics that are still very much Apple users and the new members that have, I guess, as Apple fans, they've converted or switched over. Whether that's true or not, they're just using Macs on the side with their Windows computers. Is that a lot of newer Mac users that I see prefer it for their music or photos and more of their social life and things, and they don't place that much demand on the Mac as they do with bringing their office work home and using Microsoft Office, PowerPoint, Excel, and getting down to business where their demands and their standards on what they expect a computer to do are a bit different. At least in my observation, may not be true everywhere, but that's certainly what I've seen with people around me and in the business that I've been. Is that Windows? It's kind of like a double standard. It's like, oh well, this is a Mac. It's cute. It does my photos and videos, and it does it nicely, and I get to do on there and go chatting. And then, but if their Windows computer screws up through Office, that's time, that's money. And how dare you screw up? You can't do this because, by golly, those macros used to work for me, and now they're not working, and now you're making me do all this other stuff for me to get out a document. So that's a lot of the things that I've at least observed with the way users behave between the two.
And that actually gets onto another issue that I was going to skip this week, and we largely are going to, but I do want to get into next week, and that is there are people who use a Mac for work. And as there are some changes that Apple has been making lately that have been breaking some of that stuff. And like you're saying, the average user who's using their Mac for play doesn't really care about any of this. But if you're somebody who your Mac is how you make your living, you're
like me?
Yeah. It's like Apple creating issues with some of this stuff going forward. That is the aspect of I'm wondering going forward over the next 3 to 5 years how much the Mac community and Apple community in general is going to splinter as a result of that. Because my personal opinion, and time will tell, is Apple is very intent on going along a certain path that's not necessarily compatible with what those people do. And those people are part of what made the Mac cool again. Made Apple start having this boom. I think Apple, even though I would argue they're not the majority of Mac users, they're not the majority of they're probably that somewhere between 25 and 5% fringe. They're not the bulk of that, but it's one of those, if they piss off enough of those people, what does that do to the general impression of a Mac? Because, I disagree with this implied thing, but like in the movies and TVs and stuff, you stick an Apple product in somebody's hand and suddenly they're a geek and they're sad and they're sad. I personally don't agree with it, but if you piss off all the people that feel that way about Apple and they can't use Apple to get work done anymore, what does that do to the Apple brand? What is that?
Apple is actually moving more and more mobile, and their notebooks, like I said, are the largest section of sales versus just desktop Macs as a whole. But they're pushing way more mobile, and their mobile side, and I'm going to go ahead and throw, which the market doesn't do, but the iPad is mobile. The iPad's actually counted as part of.
Well, no, it's like we were saying before you came in that why the Mac Pro is their most, like you say, their biggest seller. It's shrinking, and more it's becoming iPads and iPhones.
Absolutely, sure. And I think that Apple is cool with it. The Mac is always going to be there, but it's going in line with what a lot of Apple supporters will say is that we're in a post-PC era, and that will be their answer to that. Well,
what does that mean?
You know,
Can you explain that?
I don't need to do all this stuff, and I'm going to be content with my mobile device or iPad because that's really all I wanted to do in terms of a computer. But I guarantee you that user is likely to have a Windows PC at home with Microsoft Office on it, or somehow their work is bleeding into their home, and they're dealing with it there on that. Now, I will say that there are applications that run on the iPhone and iPad that will import quite nicely Microsoft Office, and that might be making up some of that need of being able to have a Windows PC at home, and probably that will go the way of that. But Apple has gone from being better in the old days to being cool. That's how I would say the transition has been, at least from the good old days of Apple, when Apple users were true geeks, and now they're more Britney Spears fans, or whatever.
So it doesn't matter if you're a dumbass as long as you look good being a dumbass.
Music, whatever, not to put down any music genre. It's just what's a good way to say that they're not interested in technology for what's inside it today. They're interested in technology because, man, I can hear the music that I want to listen to and dance to, and really nothing else matters. You've lost what I'm after is you've lost that knowledge that we discussed last time. Is, man, I don't see Apple users as uber geeks like they used to be, and so it's gone from Apple's mantra of being better to now being cool. And cool doesn't necessarily mean better; it just means cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that could potentially be to the detriment of the platform if Apple go along with what the majority of those people want, like going for an easier experience, like with the App Store and stuff like that. So, like you say, just because it is cool, it doesn't always necessarily mean it's the best way to go.
Exactly.
Well, and it's one of those, it's creating an imbalance in that basically all it's going to take is for a company to remember it. I kind of wish we'd done Linux this week because I basically pulled my plan. We'll do that next week. But there's this ostracizing going on, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Okay, moving on to the. We talked about this some last week, but now it is the official sign. You think they're going to back off of the 30%? So do a lot of other people. I thought. The question on this is, how bad is this 30%? This basic rape all transactions that don't take place in any way, shape, or form in the Apple ecosystem going to ultimately wind up biting iOS? Because it's one of those things that could hurt them. But on the other hand, it just depends.
I think the biggest, it's kind of like what you're going on, forgetting about the 30%, because they'll likely just do another policy change, or I guess further redefine what it would be put to.
Well, we should clarify. They're fully entitled.
Templates. And, I'm just going to come out and say, because I'm going to have my own video on mobile ecosystems. The amount of applications not matter. I'm sorry. When you're in the 100,000s, and that goes for Android as well, what is the point? Having that many apps, many new developers get lost within markets that are that large. You pretty much just lose, I think, a tremendous amount of the initiative and creativity that goes into it when it's very fresh and new. And how many of these applications, which you can go to a dev seminar and they'll talk about developing for iOS, and many developers trying to stay within frameworks that they can port over to all of the devices. whether iOS, Android, WebOS, what have you. And they'll usually iOS, because many of these developers don't want to bother learning Objective-C and getting into the core of it. They want to get a template and put a new wrapper on it. And pretty much when you start doing that, you really do limit some of the core uniqueness of function and really the purpose of having people create that many apps. If it's gonna be that way to enter the door and create a certain quality of applications, what's the point? I don't care if I have 300,000 applications. When the hell am I gonna have time to go through all 300,000? And I don't care if there's 10 versions of Twitter apps or 50 versions. I think it becomes extremely redundant. I don't really want to have a pet rock application. I need something that's gonna do something useful for me. And I think in the end, once the toy part of it has worn off and you say, this is cool, and you get bored with it, all those apps become really mostly meaningless in the end, because you get tired of flipping the channels. Because that's how I look at these App Store things. There are people that love to sit on the couch and change channels every 2 seconds without absorbing any of the content coming in. But what that person eventually does is they do find a show or a few shows that they like, and then they stick with it. They forget about constantly changing the channel.
Yeah.
And I just think it's ridiculous to use these App Store sizes as something that should be like a pro.
Well,
it's a disaster in terms of being a new developer. And everybody, and it's quite easy to see that advertisement is used to continue to try to attract developers to say, hey, the chances of you really getting a whole lot of exposure at this point, since we're so large, is pretty small. But you know what? Even if you do get your application out there, we'll somehow compensate your entry fee of $99 to come in with some of the ads that you can get and run it. And that is if anybody really finds your app, and then after that finds your app useful. So.
Well, like you're saying, the number of apps is bragging rights. At the end of the day, the fact that there are so many apps is creating a problem for every app store. Apple, Android, every single one of them. Once you get past about 1,000 apps, every app store has this problem of, damn, how do we make it easy for the end user to find what they don't know they want? It's the problem all of them are desperately trying to solve, and I'm going to just flat out say none of them have solved. Android hasn't solved this, iOS Marketplace hasn't. None of them have figured out, how do I help somebody who doesn't know what they're looking for just happen to find it so they can either download it, buy it, subscribe to it, whatever. Because that is the real problem. Like you're saying, they've all gotten too large for that.
Yes.
That's the other reason this 30% is real son, because the 30% is saying, Apple's saying, any subscriptions you offer in the iOS ecosystem have to be for the same price as your well-known brand outside of the iOS ecosystem. And I just don't see that flying. If Apple wants their 30% of every subscription that takes place inside the iOS, I think that's steep, but it's their platform, they're entitled to it. Saying I have to fix my prices on transactions I do entirely out of their control, entirely out of their ecosystem to match a cost I don't have over here is bullshit. If I wanted to, and honestly, whether or not I can get away with charging more for the iOS subscription than I do for the from my website subscription or download or whatever is going to be up to the consumer. You know, the best analogy I've heard to this is the minibar analogy. It's like you can get the can of peanuts out of the minibar in the hotel room, or you can leave the hotel room and go across the street to the convenience store and for a fifth the price get a whole bag of peanuts. It's your choice which one you want to do. And honestly, with the fact that Apple wants a cut of everything that goes on inside of there, that's where I would see it sound. I would see the in-app subscription wind up being like the minibar. It's going to be more money to absorb the cost of doing business with Apple.
Exactly, and I think that's what I was trying to tie in. is that I believe a lot of this 30% has to do with the way the demographic and the trends are with having all these apps. I think Apple realizes that they have an ocean of apps, but really more of a lake of core apps are very productive and useful and likely to be their core in terms of revenue. And if that's the case, they're going to make it more serious to participate and make you think twice about participating in the ecosystem, because I do think that they realize that they are potentially creating a problem. And what usually happens within business to try to weed out things that you don't want, you increase the price. And what's left is the big players that can't afford to play at that price level. And
well, that is definitely what they tried to do with iAds with that $1 million buy-in, and it really is. That's the difference right there in a nutshell between iAds and AdMob. AdMob says, all you freaking small businesses who got an advertising budget of like $1,000, come here, give us money. All of you together are worth billions. iAds on the other thing says, no, serious players only, and they've lowered it now to $500,000. It's like, okay, everybody with $500,000 in cash, okay, come here. We want you as a customer. Everybody else, fuck off. It's like that is a serious capital commitment, especially in today's economy. And I think I think they're afraid of the iOS things becoming the mini bar like thing, because what happens is as soon as somebody figures out, holy shit, this is $5 a peanut. I don't want these peanuts. They cost way too damn much. We're gonna get those peanuts. I can use the exercise anyways. That's why they're trying to do the price fixing, because they know if that happens, it's going to dramatically decrease the number of in-app subscriptions, because as people's wallets get a little tight, they will go through the extra rigmarole of, even though it's harder and takes longer, of going around if the price is a deficit enough. And like you're saying, when things start to get weird for Apple, they'll just like, well, now it's 40%. Now it's not. They don't want the price to keep rising in the thing. So that it's like the hotel going to the legislator and petitioning for zoning that goes, if you're on this street, you must charge the same price as the hotel mini fridge. Even though nobody will ever buy from you. It's like,
yeah. I mean, I don't know, does anybody see something wrong with these advertisements that say, develop for iOS, and you don't have to know a thing? It's like, hello. Okay, so basically we're taking somebody who has no coding experience whatsoever. Tons of advertisements out there saying, develop for iOS without having to know anything. And all that does is just creating these cookie cutter, template out apps with just a different wrapper to just continue to make the market even more to partake in.
Well, no, but see,
really take seriously.
Yeah, you're talking about a problem that not just in iOS and in developing for that, but in pretty much anything in the tech industry. I mean, come get your $5 website, and you too can be found online. I got news for you. No, you won't. And if you come hire somebody who can...
Yes, and that's true. It does exist everywhere. But I'm on iOS because right now a lot of the buzz is, where are these mobile markets? Where is it? Android? Is it iOS? It's back and forth. And certainly we already have iOS as this massive behemoth of a marketplace that, quite frankly, I'm just sick and tired of hearing that it has... even 1 million apps.
Well, and I think...
Is there any human being that's going to go through that many apps?
I think that's the other reason Apple is being such a stickler on this 30% subscription and trying to force it from is because the big bragging number that's beginning to emerge for all the app marketplaces, and in this one, Apple is still king, and that's revenue per section, whether it's per quarter, per year, per site. Not number of apps, not number of users, none of that stuff, but dollars earned, actual money that passed hands. And the more money that they get a chunk of, the higher and better that number looks, which looks good to their shareholders. Even if they wind up shrinking their market share, that number would go up. And that's the number they care about.
Absolutely right.
And it's one of those things that has to do with monetizability.
Well, what do you expect to see? And I don't know if the Android, because at least when I hit the Android marketplace, it didn't have it, but regions of now these the marketplaces respective to the ecosystems out there that you're going to have prime real estate. That yes, you've paid the entry fee to develop for the system. You've gone through all of the digital signatures to get your application published. You're going to allow 30% to get taken off the top, or 10% respectively for the other ecosystems. But now you're also going to pay, if you're a big boy, to pay for prime real estate within the actual app store to get, so that you can get distinctly found versus.
No, that's how I see all of these going. It's going to be just like I see Android doing this, I see iOS doing this, I see Windows doing this. It's going to be just like eBay. Okay, you can submit your ad in, and then you can submit your app in, and then it just goes in the sea of all the other apps. But we're going to offer all these nickel and dime fees to get hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, out of you a year. It's like, okay, when somebody goes into the category you're in, you will be the first 10 apps they see. It's like if somebody searches for thing, you will be at the top 50% of the time, or for how many times they'll dump like on Google, whether or not your site appears as one of those ad sites. It's like all of them are going to start adapting stuff like that, and all of that is going to be a fee. Basically, like you said, they become so complex that the people who are going to be found are the people who have money for an advertising budget. Whether or not it'll need to be a large one, or
argument that happened that I've witnessed within the amount of years that I've been on YouTube. You always have all this crowd that says, "Oh, YouTube used to be fun. Now it's all controlled by visible. They have to make a living." Is my opinion. And yeah, if I'm a peon compared to another user who is bringing in a tremendous amount of revenue to YouTube. But yet you'll see all these people complaining, "Oh, I guess we're not all equal anymore." Well, you never were.
You never were. And to be honest, YouTube has an advantage that none of these marketplaces have. In the fullness of time, the Android marketplace might have, because it's going web-based, but the iOS one is not. YouTube is a web-based platform, so you can, if you know what you're doing, get yourself well ranked for what you're doing in the search engine results, so that people can find you that way. Even though they have no chance in hell of finding you through the YouTube search, they'll find you in relevance to what you're actually doing in Twitter, Google, so on, in the social graphs and in the search graphs. Right now, because these marketplaces are largely their own little islands, and Android is beginning to be an island that plays nice with the big continent global ecosystem that is internet search, but it isn't there yet. But that's going to be a big determining factor also going forward. This is one of the reasons I think iOS desperately needs a web-based interface, so that you can do external SEO to help people find you.
And bam, there comes the app. Go ahead and it goes to the Android App Store. I mean, how powerful.
Yeah, well, basically it's a way for people to fix that problem the same way they make their website findable and everything else. They just make their app site findable.
Exactly. I bet you Apple starts complaining big time once you're able to find apps straight out on Google, and just like they would like an image or a video. Like if you search Mr. Bitwinser on YouTube, you'll get a couple of my videos, and then some other places where it's all talked about. But then I can just see the whole thing where, here's the app, and it's the actual icon, takes you to the site or the Android marketplace, and bam. Apple's gonna go like, well, holy crap, now what?
Well, no, it's like, and Apple does need to add something like that, because it's and the two models for that are either selling promotions where people buy preferential placement, or making it web-based so people can do their own grunt work and make the gateway page findable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything to add on that, Phil? Or
Well, just like you say, I think the problem I had as far as the subscriptions go was where Apple was saying that they basically have the right to control what goes on outside of their ecosystem, which as far as I'm concerned, I'm waiting to see some publishers call their bluff on that and do what they want on their own websites and see what if Apple does do anything.
I guarantee you they'll do something. They'll pull their app.
Well, I think that in this case, I think that that's not necessarily a loss, because the thing is that if apps start disappearing because Apple's being too heavy-handed, people will soon.
You know, actually, that would be very interesting to see if, like, both Amazon and Audible, because these are the two who definitely have enough clout to just go, fuck you, Apple. We have enough customers who know we're not the ones doing this, and just go, we're not going to play ball. We're going to charge more for that in-house thing to deal with your 30% subscription, but we're going to leave it in there because it's functionality we know our customers want, and we're not changing the prices on our site because we don't need to, and pull our app if you think you can piss off all our customers. No, I could see them doing that. I don't think they're quite ready to play that hardball yet. But the company who's going to have to do it is going to be somebody like Amazon or Audible, or one of these companies who has that type of model, has people who like their products, have millions of users.
Microsoft Office and participating in the Mac Store.
That's a different thing because Microsoft Office doesn't sell any kind of subscription or anything.
No, but I mean, their sales have the 30%. They're going to lose the 30% to it versus going to get the box or downloading it from the Microsoft site and installing it onto the Mac.
Well, but the 30. Okay, but see the application and the disk are different.
The subscription and how it's a forced part of it, but I'm still saying that 30% is extremely aggressive, no matter if you're forcing someone to get to the subscription or not.
Why Microsoft definitely has the user base to do it, Microsoft does not have the liked PR to do it. And the fact that Audible and Amazon have started building their marketing campaign around the idea that they're cross-platform and that they work with both PC and Mac, which is a little debatable, but they do work with OS X, Windows, Android, and iOS, and that they have started making their thing on that. Since that's their whole thing and that's their selling point, you know, Apple's who's trying to break that, and these are not fledgling companies. They have millions of customers who didn't find them through Apple. They found them through either Amazon.com or Audible.com. So it's like these are the companies who have both good PR, millions of customers on their own right, and prices that their customers want. They could fight on the grounds of, we're trying to give our customers what they want as close to as what you will let us. And if you have a problem with us doing what's in our customers' best interest, pull us. But everybody's going to know it's you saying we can't supply your customers, not us not wanting to. There are other companies who, informed people would know, but the perception wouldn't be that. With those two companies, the perception would be Apple doesn't want to let me use my stuff, which is a very different perception from it's not available on Apple. It's Apple doesn't want to let me use it. Very different than not available. Very different perceptions.
It's going to be a problem anyway coming up with the subscription stuff. The internet technology is getting much more powerful, and nothing is to stop any of these subscription-based services to create an extremely powerful web-based website for all mobile devices, totally cross-platform, because you hit a site, and just like within Android or WebOS, you create a card or what have you can put on your little background and just launch it just like you would an application, and typically just to take you to their website portal versus having a dumb application.
Yep. Okay. Moving on, because we're coming up a little on time. I do want to get into these last two stories. I don't know if y'all have anything to say on the iTunes supposedly going 24-bit. My personal assessment of that is it's more gimmick than practicality.
It's surprising that they're saying that after the heels of HP talking about how iTunes is still 16-bit and the whole, beats and the touchpad. And they had the whole representative out there talking about how the industry is at 16-bit and they're losing so much of the quality because of the conversion too. So.
Well, but the bit rate really has nothing to do with the audio quality. The audio quality has to do with how it was sampled, how it was initially compressed, all of that stuff. Whether you're compressing, if all of that's high quality, you could have great quality at 8-bit, as long as all of that stuff was wide enough dynamic range. So the 24-bit isn't really going to make a difference in quality of really anything. It's just
it's certainly not going to on your iPod. I mean, you don't have the tuning sophistication and articulation is not there for anyone to hear the difference. It's kind of like, spinning your wheels and creating leaving a lot of rubber on the road.
Yeah, it's like it's like the early days of HD, where I have 1080, but it's 1080i as opposed to 1080p. So what's the point? It's one of those things. Now, if they're going to go back and start sampling everything at really high quality, and they're going to upgrade all the, like you say, the audio outs on all the iPods, and okay, then it's something. But really, it's just a buzz thing. Anything else we want to say on that, or just kind of okay?
It was ironic this announcement after the HD.
And I know that's why they're doing that. It's like people who are bitching about 16-bit, so everybody's obsessing about the 24-bit, even though it doesn't really mean anything. What do we think about the fact that FaceTime is going to be a paid thing?
I heard that it was being paid because of some regulatory problem. I don't know if I'm wrong on that. It was the price. It's not something that Apple wants, but that for FaceTime to run, Apple has to, I guess, pay some sort of legal or regulatory fee, and that 99 cents is to help pay for that.
Well, that's one rumor there. The betas are still free, so I guess if you're a smart person, what you would do is download the latest beta and just run that instead of the 99 cents official version, because there's not much difference between them at this point, to be quite honest. But the iPhones have it, and my guess is the iPad 2 is going to have it, but all the Mac users are going to have to buy it. And this is one of those things, I think it creates an issue no matter what the cause is, because Skype's free, and it's FaceTime is supposed to be replacing iChat, right?
I hope it doesn't replace iChat. Let's see.
Going forward, I think that's the plan. So it's one of those things, it's like...
they say Apple told Mac rumors that FaceTime dollar charge for existing Mac users is regulatory related. And they're saying, remember the $2 802.11n patch in 2007.
Oh, well, okay, so it's regulatory fee related. In the interest of customer service, you're telling me Apple doesn't have the cash reserves to eat $1? You're telling me there's...
Most things get passed on to consumers. I think a lot of corporations.
Yeah, I know, but there's regardless of where the fee's coming from or what's going on here, and I'm not saying they're making up the regulatory thing, but I'm honestly scratching my head to think of what regulatory thing would make Apple charge a fee for an upgrade to an already existing service. Because that is basically what this is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Wait, what federal regulation would say you can't upgrade an already existing service?
I just say use Skype, for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's the thing. This, regardless of where this fee came from and what the thing is, the end result here is this further splinters the idea of FaceTime being a unified all Mac, all Apple products communication system, which is what it was intended to be. And now it's like, oh, well, if your Mac didn't come with FaceTime, you have to buy it. It's just, when there are not just one, but 2 or 3 good free alternatives that do the same thing and work with all Apple devices and non-Apple devices. It's like, the point of FaceTime is quickly becoming, what was the point again? That's like, it's like, I'm just, yeah. So, I'm honestly thinking this is like the final nail in the coffin for FaceTime. Do you think I'm overreacting there, or do you think it's like, okay, great idea, but
when it started out there, you know, it was touted for a while, and then really Skype kind of blew it out of the water. It's different with the mobile device because, man, Apple is exerting a lot and flexing its muscles and determining what is allowed to run. They could make it so that it's just FaceTime through there, kind of like the whole Google Voice apps, you know, and using the voice over IP type stuff.
Well, I would argue why Apple has every right to do that. I don't think it's in their best interest to do so.
Oh yeah.
And I'm saying not because they'll be screwing the end user, although that is one reason they shouldn't do it. The real reason I think they shouldn't do that is because as of late, Apple has started to attract the eye of regulatories. And that would be a come audit me red flag to all the regulators, and that you're preventing your competition from being able to work with your device and your customers from being able to talk in any way, shape, or form to your company. If that doesn't scream, hey, regulators, come fuck us over, I don't know what doesn't.
Sure.
They would have both the Trade Commission and the EU. It's like, and Apple doesn't want to make an enemy of the EU because the EU's breathing on Google right now. It's like they want EU, please go bug Google. Leave us alone. They don't want to do anything to change that perception at all. Okay. Anything else we want to go into, or we think we're about?
Was that all the topics?
Well, I don't want to be going into the QuickTime stuff today because that's kind of a whole show in and of itself for the complexity of it. Let's see, we've gone over the Mac Pros. I guess the only other thing, even though it pains me to do this, is happy birthday, Steve. It was yesterday, but it's happy late birthday.
Coming from the man that self-proclaims to hate Apple is initiating a birthday wish.
Hey. He's not a Jehovah's Witness or something where birthdays are a crime. A bit of civil nicety, okay? I still don't like Apple. And I still think Apple would be better off without Steve. But, it's his birthday, he's sick, and like or hate him, he is one of the people who has contributed a lot to the industry.
Sure, absolutely.
So, mutual respect, regardless of my personal preferences, is not an unrealistic thing. Okay, I guess that's the end of this iWorld now.